mean, there's literally a never-ending list of things that you're supposed to be doing as a Mormon, but I am just going to try and cover a small portion of those things. You want to go to church every single Sunday of your life. Also, you want to stay in your Sunday clothes after church and for the rest of the day, because then you'll remember that it's Sunday and you'll keep the Sabbath holy. You shouldn't be doing anything on the Sabbath day except going to church, reading your scriptures, saying your prayers. You don't want to be watching any movies or shopping or swimming. You don't want to be doing anything like that. If you're going to visit your family, it should just be quiet and subdued, maybe reading scriptures together, maybe talking about the gospel. Hey, even better. Next on the list, like other Christian churches, we were taught not to have sex outside of marriage. But Mormons took a few steps further. I was taught don't even go in the same room with a member of the opposite sex because you could get into trouble that way. They teach their children that they would rather find out that you had died than find out that you had had sex before marriage. Dating. You are not supposed to date anyone who is not a Mormon. That would mean you might fall in love, you might get married outside of the Mormon temple, and you wouldn't be able to raise your children as Mormons. You are only supposed to date after the age of 16. Oh, and when you turn 16, you only should be dating in groups. You're not supposed to single date until you turn 18. Also, don't single date anyone unless they have already gone on their mission for the Mormon church so that you can be ready to marry them in the temple. Now, this is applying to women. Men are basically required to serve that mission. Also, you probably shouldn't kiss anyone until you are basically engaged and you're pretty sure that you're gonna be getting married. And on that note, let's talk about modesty. When you are a Mormon, you are supposed to keep your shoulders covered all the way down to your knees. In fact, Mormons help make it real easy for you by manufacturing their own underwear, so that after you get married in the temple, you are required to wear the church underwear. That will keep you modest even after marriage. The underwear goes from your shoulders all the way down to your knees. But if you are wearing the Mormon underwear and you still happen to be wearing tight-fitting clothing, you are still going to be considered as immodest. Alright, so let's talk about coffee. You are not supposed to drink coffee as a Mormon. They actually haven't really explained why that is. Some members even take it a step further, and you're not supposed to even have coffee cake, coffee flavored candies, coffee jelly beans, because if you end up tasting the flavor and liking it, that could lead you down a really scary road where you find yourself drinking coffee. And coffee is actually one of those things that will keep you from being able to get married in the Mormon temple. Alright, R-rated movies. You are definitely not supposed to watch any R-rated movie. But if you came from a family like mine, you took that even a step further. You know what? The prophet said that back in the 60s or 70s, and the modern PG-13 movies, they're the equivalent of the R-rated movies back when he said that. So you probably shouldn't be watching PG-13 movies either. If you ever find yourself in a situation where someone is watching a movie that has anything offensive in it, you are supposed to stand up and proudly announce that this is offensive and walk away. In fact, I did this while on a date one time, watching a PG-13 movie in the theater, which I felt had something offensive in it, and I told my date I was going to the bathroom at the beginning of the movie and spent the rest of the movie in the lobby. Speaking of getting offended, you definitely don't want to use any swear words, and there are a lot of homes in Mormon families where there are other words that are not allowed as well. If you do happen to say a bad word in these homes, you might get your mouth washed out with soap, or in my home, we had cayenne pepper put on our tongue. If you have friends at school who swear or say things that are offensive, then other people are going to think that you're okay with that. So they taught us to avoid displayed even the appearance of evil, which means you had to constantly be worrying about whether or not the people around you were doing bad things, so that you could be very vocal about telling them to stop, and also that you wouldn't be friends with people who didn't have your standards. You also felt very self-conscious about doing something wrong or even looking like you might be doing something wrong. Keeping the rules meant that you were fully converted to the gospel and that you believed that the prophets and the apostles were men of God who were giving us these rules for a reason. The teachings that the prophets and the apostles give during conference, which is a semi-annual event for Mormons, those teachings given from the podium were considered to be scripture for our day, even maybe more important than the old scriptures. So these things that our leaders were saying at conference were so important. We were supposed to study them. We were supposed to try to attend these 2-day conferences for as many possible hours as we could, and then study the talks later and try to devote your entire life to following every piece of counsel that the leaders gave us. There was a time when they counseled and they came out with this revelation that women should only have one pair of earrings in their ear. So if you happened to be wearing 2 pair of earrings in one ear, then it meant that you didn't care about the prophet and that he had revealed this truth from God, that you were supposed to only wear 1 pair of earrings. So you were kind of constantly looking around to see who was and wasn't keeping the rules, because that told you how converted they were, how much they believed in, and how much they followed the rules. But the worst part about all of this is that you're being taught every single Sunday how you can follow the rules even more closely. There's this idea of good, better, and best. And even if you're doing something that you might consider to be good, like reading your scriptures, there's always a way that you actually could be doing it better, that you might actually be even doing that wrong. At all times, you want to look like you are a good, upstanding member of the church. This is so that you can be a good influence on people, so that they will notice just how wonderful you are, and they will want to join the church, because after all, people are always watching. So as a Mormon, you feel this obligation to continually be putting out this perfect face, this perfect smile, this perfect happiness, because look at me, I'm so happy. Don't you want to know the set of rules that I'm following in the church that I'm in that brings you this much happiness? This is one of the things that really started to bother me. Our church claimed to have the one and only plan of happiness, which meant that following these rules would bring you happiness. But when you look at the depression rates in Utah, the amount of antidepressant medication that's being consumed, the amount of suicides that are happening in the state, and this is where the highest concentration of Mormons lives, you can see that this plan of happiness is obviously broken. Now, the church will claim that their plan of happiness is absolutely perfect. It comes from the leaders who got it from God himself. And so they will blame the members for anything and everything that is broken. They will tell the members that they are the problem, that they are what is wrong, so that you will not step back and realize that it's actually this plan of happiness and this set of rules that is broken. The other thing that the church does is they tell their members that nobody can be happy outside of Mormonism, that that's a fake happiness, that Mormonism has the one and only plan for happiness, and this is the one and only place where you can be happy, and if you leave, you will never be happy again. And this is a common technique that cults actually use. Now, I could go on for a super long time telling you more rules. This is just a tiny sampling, like I said at the beginning. But here's the crazy part. After you leave the church, if you talk to a current member about these rules that you were taught to follow growing up, they will do something to you called gaslighting. They will treat you like you're crazy, that nobody else actually follows those rules, that you are the only person in the world who was taught to follow those rules, and that your experience is an isolated experience that nobody else had. These things can be verified through decades of conference talks that they're actually being taught in the Mormon Church, and by all of the Mormons who have been taught these things in their home and are willing to admit it, and by all of the ex-Mormon community, the members who have now left the church. But the even crazier thing is that when current members see these people who leave, the very first thing they think is, you must not have been converted to the church. You must not have really believed. So you see how they kind of play these mind games with you, how there's so many contradictions. And I could make so many more videos explaining the contradictions in the church. But this idea of perfectionism is what I really wanted to get to in this video. Hopefully you can see where someone might start to feel like, you know what? Everything is bad. And as a Mormon, there was just so little that was even considered to be okay. This leaves you in a constant state of shame and feeling like you are not good enough. So I promised I would talk about the damage that the church is doing to its members, and hopefully this video helps you have just a small introduction to the damage that might be happening by trying to follow an impossible, perfectionistic set of rules with a constant feeling of shame over your head, with a constant feeling of wondering if other people are going to think you're doing something wrong, wondering if you're doing something wrong, wondering if the people around you are doing something wrong, basically feeling like everything is wrong. So this video is part 1 of the damage being done by the Mormon Church. If you are a Mormon or were a Mormon, leave a comment below. Let us know some of the rules that I forgot to mention, some of the things that your parents taught you growing up that you learned from conference talks and ensigns and the New Era, the church magazines and the church pamphlets, the First Strength of the Youth pamphlet. There's just so much information constantly being given to you as a Mormon that I could only scratch the surface of the things that you're supposed to be doing. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.